There is always something new to learn about in the real estate world. That's why we have Victoria McGuire back in today's Realty Rant, along with Jim Holloway from Hillsborough Title Company, with some changes you will see in contracts for both buyers and sellers. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
This is why it's so interesting we do these Realty Rant segments, because you've been on the show now for more than a year. There's so many topics, and certainly with everything changing as much as it does.
It does.
And this is a huge change that I'm surprised we haven't talked about yet, Victoria.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get our expert here to go into the details for us, because Jim certainly knows his stuff. The changes that happened refer to a contingency in the contract, and a lot of people don't know what a contingency is, so I wanted to just explain that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let Jim take over from there. A contingency is something that's written into the contract that allows the buyer to back out of the contract without the penalty of losing their escrow deposit. So it's a very important thing that's written in, and the standard.
It's probably used a lot as well.
It is, and we can write in any kind of contingency we want to, but the two big standard contingencies that are in a contract are the inspection and the financing. So that's why this is so important, because it's an integral part of the contract. And the other change has to do with the way that the municipal liens are researched, and I'm going to let Jim go into details about that, because it affects the buyer in a big way, and the seller too.
Okay, yeah, it affects both people on that. This is affecting a lot of people here in the Bay Area. So where do you want to start? What do you think people really need to know?
Well, I was going to start with the financing contingency, and again, that's the period during which the buyer can terminate the contract if they're denied financing and get their deposit back. In 2013, they made a change to the contract and really expanded the contingency period. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau had taken over lending in the United States, and the fear was it was going to be much more difficult to get a loan. And they actually expanded it so far that they gave them up to 7 days prior to the closing, and the buyer could terminate and get their deposit back. Looking back, we realized it's not impossible to get a loan. Buyers can still get loans and still close on houses. Good news.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
And so they shortened the time period. It's now 30 days from the effective date of the contract. If the buyer does not cancel within that contingency period, they cannot get their deposit back. They're not entitled to get their deposit back. So
is that something that recently changed?
It changed in April of this year.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, fairly recently. And a lot of people aren't aware of it. So I encourage buyers to get with a loan officer as soon as possible, maybe even before they start looking for houses, to make sure that they can qualify for the loan that they want, that they need to buy their house, and they don't run afoul of the contingency period.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's financing part. What are the other changes?
In 2013, they added to the contract something called a municipal lien search. It's a search separate and apart from the title search. It was not defined in the contract, so the industry, we defined it ourselves as a search of open building permits, unrecorded code violations, and unpaid utility bills. The FAR bar contract, which is the most widely used contract, is promulgated by a committee of the Florida Bar and the Florida Association of Realtors. There are 11 lawyers and 11 realtors on the committee, and they decided to define municipal lien search, and they narrowed the search significantly. It is now a search of liens that would be provided for by Chapter 159 and 170 of the Florida statutes. Those statutes expressly do not include a search of open building permits and unrecorded code violations. So if a buyer wants those searches to be done, they have to ask expressly that we do those searches. And it's not a function of the title search. In fact, title companies don't do the search. We order the search from a third-party vendor.
Okay. Well, we have about a minute left. You don't know what you don't know, and I think there's so much that's changing. There's so much we need to know, and that's why I love doing these segments, because you're trying to educate people on what to ask for.
Exactly.
So what say you? What's the take home? How do we make sure that we know these changes?
Again, the take home is to work with an agent that you know has your best interests at heart, that has a good team of people surrounding them that can help you to, when you don't know, that we're telling you what you need to know so that you're protecting yourself.
All right, and then what's your take home is kind of being on the front lines of this?
Yeah, I think like she said, I think it's important to find a realtor who participates in educational process, you know, sort of the continuing education, and has a good team around them.
Yeah.
Of people who really know what's in this contract and really understand real estate.
And can explain it to you so the consumer does
Yes,
know.
and
Well, thank you both so much for being here. We're out of time, but I know if you are looking into a home, this is the team to call. And certainly, again, education is always your passion. So there's plenty more Realty Rant segments too. You can go to realtyrant.com.